of the New York Liberty Development Corporation for Wednesday, July 25th. I'm going to act as chairman for this meeting. We welcome public comment. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance. We're free to ask questions. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest with respect to any of the items on the agenda? No. There are none. Okay, Jonathan, you have, I think, 3 items you're going to present, and then we'll vote on all 3, okay, at the end.
Yes.
So take it away.
Okay, the Liberty Development Corporation is a local development corporation incorporated as a charitable not-for-profit. The corporation was formed primarily to finance the construction and renovation of commercial development projects in Lower Manhattan after September 11, 2001. The corporation undertakes its public purpose by issuing federally tax-exempt and/or taxable bonds, Liberty bonds. Since 2005, the corporation issued $4.3 billion of its Liberty bonds, not including multiple refundings. Liberty bonds remain outstanding on all but one of the projects. Due to the sunset of the Liberty Bond legislative authorization, no additional new money Liberty bonds can be issued. However, staff of the corporation anticipates that additional refundings of previously issued Liberty bonds may be requested in the future. Although no present transactions are pending, various corporate housekeeping and not-for-profit corporation law compliance actions are recommended to be taken now to maintain the good standing of the corporation to appropriately address such potential refundings. So the materials are somewhat arbitrarily divided into sort of 3 packages. One I'm calling administrative, the next is conflicts and bylaws, and the third is pre-qualification lists for counsel and underwriters. So I'm just going to dig in at the beginning. The first administrative item is adoption of revised ESD guidelines for the use, awarding, monitoring, and reporting of procurement contracts, known as the 2018 guidelines. In order to ensure the consistent, fair, and competitive retention of goods and services, staff recommends the voluntary adoption of procurement guidelines adopted by the New York State Urban Development Corporation, doing business as Empire State Development. At their March 29, 2018 meeting, they adopted guidelines, and we are now seeking approval of those proposed guidelines. The guidelines set forth the policies and procedures to be followed by the corporation seeking to contract for goods or services. It should be noted that the guidelines do not have the force of law, are required only of public authorities and public benefit corporations, not local development corporations such as the Liberty Development Corporation, and are proposed as a statement of best practices and procedures. No contract is invalid merely because the guidelines have not been followed. The guidelines define the universe of procurement transactions which are subject to the policies and procedures. The general rule is all procurements by the corporations must be competitive and must be obtained after advertisement in the New York State Contract Reporter. Any questions about that item? Second item, administrative item, is the delegation of authority related to the contracts. Currently, only the board of directors of the corporation has the power to enter into any contract. The contract procurement process for goods and services involves compliance with multiple procedures, including board approval of each contract. The scheduling and formality of a full board meeting is necessary. Delegating authority to an officer of the corporation to approve contracts up to a specified amount could help expedite finalizing contracts. It is proposed that the directors delegate authority so that only contracts over $100,000 would require approval by the directors. The authority to enter into contracts not to exceed $100,000 could be delegated to the president or his designees. The materials include various criteria to determine eligible contracts and provide that contracts involving services to be rendered over a period of more than 1 year must be approved by the directors regardless of the amount of contract. The third administrative item is the adoption of the ESD whistleblower policy. The Nonprofit Revitalization Act of 2013 requires not-for-profit corporations with 20 or more employees and annual revenues exceeding $1 million to adopt whistleblower policies. We don't necessarily conform with all those requirements, but we thought it was good corporate practice to adopt these policies. The policy is meant to protect directors, officers, employees, and volunteers who make good faith reports of actions or suspected actions taken by or within the corporation that are illegal, fraudulent, or in violation of the adopted policy of the corporation. Staff recommends that the corporation adopt the ESD whistleblower policy and prohibition on retaliation against whistleblowers, dated April 2015. The next administrative item seeks to comply with a statute which requires the adoption of an investment policy by all corporations subject to its provisions to ensure that investments of the corporation are prudently managed. The New York Prudent Management of Institutional Funds Act applies to all corporations incorporated under the Not-for-Profit Corporation Law, including the corporation. Staff recommends that the corporation adopt the ESD investment guidelines as amended on July 27, 2017. The last administrative item is the adoption of the annual report. The Not-for-Profit Corporation Law requires the board of the Not-for-Profit Corporation to present annually a report to members showing in appropriate detail the assets and liabilities, principal changes in those at the end of the 12-month fiscal period, revenues and receipts, expenses or disbursements, and number of members of the corporation. Staff recommends that the board adopt Note 3A of the audited combined financial statements of the New York Job Development Authority as of March 31st, 2018 as the annual report of the corporation, and direct such annual report be presented to the members. The board also is requested to ratify the adoption and presentation to the members of the applicable note of the audited financial statement as of each fiscal year since inception of the corporation and as of each subsequent fiscal year as the respective annual report of the corporation. At this time, the Board of Directors of the corporation is being requested to adopt the annual report, adopt the 2018 guidelines, adopt the whistleblower policy, and adopt the investment guidelines, and finally adopt the delegation of contracting authority.
And will that be all the items, Jonathan? Does that cover your whole?
No, that's just the administrative ones.
All right, let's take the administrative and then we'll go from there. So
Okay.
Are there any questions from the directors on any of the administrative items that Jonathan ran through? There's no public here to ask the question. So is there a motion to approve these administrative items?
So moved.
Well, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, take it away.
Okay, this is with an item respecting the approval of a conflicts policy and approval of amendments to the bylaws. Certain statutory sections of the Not-for-Profit Corporation Law have been amended on separate occasions, necessitating changes to the bylaws and the adoption of the Corporation Conflicts of Interest and Related Party Transaction Policy. The bylaws will be amended to prohibit directors who are employees of the corporation from participating in any board of directors or committee deliberations related to the administration of the whistleblower policy, also to remove the requirement to create an audit and finance committee, to authorize employees of the corporation to serve as chairperson of the board of directors, and to remove the definition of interested directors and replace the definition with a reference to the conflicts policy. That's the extent of the amendments to the bylaws. The conflict of interest and related party transaction policy is intended to ensure that its directors, officers, and key persons act in the corporation's best interest and comply with the applicable legal requirements of the Not-for-Profit Corporation Law. All directors, officers, and key persons owe a duty of loyalty to the corporation and must act in good faith in the corporation's best interest rather than the interest of another entity or person, and must comply with all legal requirements. Directors, officers, and key persons shall not engage in any transaction or arrangement that involves a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict, except in compliance with the policy. In conjunction with the policy, directors will be required to sign a questionnaire disclosing all entities of which they serve in any capacity and with which they may have a conflict. All key persons and directors have to affirm they have read and will abide by the policy. The Board of Directors is now being asked to approve the adoption of the conflicts of interest policy and approve the amended bylaws.
Okay, is there any questions from directors on the conflict of interest policy?
Nope.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, third item.
Okay. This action seeks adoption by the Liberty Development Corporation of pre-qualified lists of underwriters, financial advisors, and legal counsel, which would make these firms available for future recommendation to the corporation's board of directors. With respect to these professionals, ESD adopted a pre-qualified list of underwriters and financial advisors in 2016, and ESD also adopted a pre-qualified list of counsel in 2017. Directors are being requested to adopt all of these lists for the corporation. No individual firm is being recommended at this time for attention in connection with any particular matter. This would simply allow staff to select and recommend retention of a firm from among the candidate firms in connection with particular projects without the need for conducting individual solicitations. This will save several months for each project. As set forth in detail in the materials, ESD conducted a thorough and open process to select these eligible firms for the pre-qualified lists. The pre-qualified lists to be adopted will expire when the ESD lists expire or are extended. Please also note that for underwriters and counsel, if the firms or key players are merged, moved, or are otherwise reconstituted, the new firm may be qualified for the list. We're now asking the board to approve both these lists.
Okay, any questions from directors on the procurement?
Just a quick one. Is there an expiration date for the ESD one, or is it kind of?
Yes, no, there is an expiration date. It's different for the underwriters than for the counsel. The underwriters list actually is expiring very shortly, but the CFO has the authority to extend that list for a year.
Okay.
I've spoken with her about an hour ago. She indicates that she does plan to extend, and after that first year, then the president, should be Howard, also has the authority to extend that list for a full additional year. And the council list is 2020, expires in 2020. So there is some time left before we have to call this meeting again to adopt those lists.
Any other questions? Motion to approve.
Second, in favor? Aye. So moved. So moved.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
All right.
All right. Great.